So I had read something that I saw somebody had reposted about basically Yogi Bhajan's definition of stress, which is that you don't have the inner resources to handle the outer pressure. That's stress. Okay, so you have to build the inner resources, which is what you're doing here and through your practice. The inner resources, and that's not a bad, I want to be clear, like, that's not a bad moment, because that means that the world is asking more of you than you have previously had the resources for. Now, if that's the case, that means that you're being asked to step up in a different way. So it's a great moment. You have to answer it with enough inner resources, which you do have. It's just about cultivating and regenerating and rejuvenating those resources. You wouldn't be asked to do it if you didn't have the capacity for it. So that there's always that happening. But then, we need to, over the span of the chronology, the viciousness of time, we have to, especially, you've created a baby from your body, and whatever else happened in your personal life, and some of our resources, our reserve has been spent. So we have to rejuvenate that, which is renew that. Yogi Bhajan called it renew to be new. So that's certainly what you're doing, and there's many things I'm sure you're doing that is going to give you that. But at the same time, sometimes our mission changes a little bit, and I think it's important when you feel fatigued or overwhelmed by what people, what the world is asking of you. You do also have to ask yourself, how personally and personal am I being? Yogi Bhajan, very standard Yogi Bhajan business and success teaching. If you want your business to be successful, which is your brand, as a teacher, you have to understand that you're serving that brand. It has nothing to do with you. So even the brand of Guru Jagat has nothing to do with me. Yeah. I'm serving that brand.
It's the art of delegation. And I think that's the big lesson in it, I think, is to learn to delegate.
Yeah, because part of the thing with delegation is that somewhere subconsciously you think that other people aren't smarter than you and better than you.
Or
right,
you wanna
Shabapri?
Control everything.
Yeah. It's really impossible to be better or smarter than Shabapri, but it's really hard. It's a big kind of leap in your. But this is what I was saying. I don't know if I was saying it here or I was saying it in New York, but you want to prepare for your success. Yogi Bhajan says one of the big issues for people because I want to talk a little bit about the business of what you're up to. You have to prepare for your own success. He says it's one of the huge pitfalls of people who are, everything's going right. You have people who want to hire you. You have a following. You have whatever the thing is. You've been at it for 20 years. You're not you're a veteran. You have a seniority. You have a stage presence. You have all these things you've cultivated over these years that people now want to come to you to receive the benefit of. But you have to prepare for your success. He said this is what happens with people who get famous and then freak out and can't hold their fame. It's very common, and it's all about that we haven't prepared for our success. So have you prepared for your success? What are you doing to prepare for your success? Assume you will be successful, and you're going to be more successful than you are now. So what are we doing to prepare for our success? Well, one of the things we have to do is we have to hire people. We have to delegate. We have to grow our support team, and that kind of thing, so that we're not answering all our emails. And there is a buffer between what people want from us and what entering the kind of neurotic world. And you have certain kind of setups of buffer around that. And everyone, if you're really delivering the goods, everyone's going to act weird around you. That's why famous people only hang out with famous people. That is, I mean, really, people, you like, oh, it's such a club and all this kind of stuff. Well, part of the reason is because people act so weird around famous people. So you're just like, you're already exhausted because you're famous. It's like so hard. So, you're already exhausted being famous. But that's the way people think of it, is like, what's wrong with them? They're like rich and famous. Like, what's their problem? But they haven't prepared for their success. So there's that issue at hand, and what all of that comes with. I mean, this is the Marilyn Monroe of it all. She did not prepare for what was going to happen, and the psychic pressure of that, it crippled her, because she was, I think, quite a sensitive person. It just crippled her. And so then the drugs, and then the alcohol, and the numbing, and then the CIA. Issues, all issues that have to do with being famous, and so, but so we have to prepare, right? This is a great example of like, how can you get more prepared for your, and you should all assume your radiant body expands, you're gonna be more successful. Are you ready for it? Because it's gonna demand more of you in every way. And that's why, you get into these, because in Los Angeles is very common. It's like, you're in these club, the famous people club. But the reason why they hang out with each other is because at least another famous person isn't going to be weird to me, because they know what it's like to be famous. So it's a little bit of a relief psychically, instead of like everyone, when you're in a room with like a famous person and everybody's all like, I mean, it's really intense. And I was thinking about this because we were, backstage at the Grammys, and I had a couple of people tell me on social media, people say, I saw you backstage at the Grammys, but I was afraid to talk to you. And I was like, you're afraid to talk to me? Like, weren't you afraid to talk to Drake or like someone else? But then you realize it's all gradient scales of people's, kind of thing. And people have that with you. So you have to prepare for your success. You may not think, but you have a sphere of influence, in one way or another. Now we have social media influencers. So there's, a lot of that. That is more in the culture. But you have a sphere of influence, and you have to prepare for it so it doesn't. So the viciousness of the demands of the outer pressure is not more than your inner resource, which is what the definition of stress is. So you can do that, and you can get better at it, and you're going to need to get better at it. So let's let's all get prepared for our success. Can we do that? And because it's going to get bigger, and it's going to be wonderful. But the only time it's not wonderful is when you feel, and then also things change. So you may not be willing to do privates anymore, or you may not be. There's a point at which Yogi Bhajan said to, kind of one of the most famous Kundalini teachers of that era, he said, you no longer can do privates, because it wasn't appropriate anymore, basically. So there's moments where you have to decide, like, what can you do, and what can you may just not have time or the energy to work with people. Working with people privately. Who works with people privately here? Either in coaching or teaching or whatever. Okay, it's hard. It's not easy, because you're basically their therapist, their best friend, their healer, it's just like, on and on and on. And you don't want to be, if you're in this kind of, it's good to be this way in a low key way, but it's easy to kind of be like, you can't be like therapists who are like, and we've reached our 50 minutes now. We'll have to talk about that next week. You wish you could kind of be that way, but it's a little harder in our scene to be that person. But it's good to set up strong boundaries, because people are desperate and hungry, and they want what you have, which is in some way they see in you an inspiration, a fulfillment, a hope for something different. And that's beautiful. But so you have to, you're going to be dealing with the hunger of the kind of soul. That's part of your job. Yogi Bhajan said, this is not glamorous. I'm a garbage man. He always said that. I'm a garbage man. I take out people's garbage. It's not that glamorous. But people are desperate to have their garbage shaken out. So you have all of that going on, but you can do this. You can prepare for your success, and you just have to, you probably had some postnatal depletion that you're still not recovered from. It's very common.
It's funny you should say that, because in the class this morning I went over the birth of my daughter, moment by moment.
Yeah.
Very weird.
Yeah. No, you could have you're still recovering from some of the postnatal stuff, because a lot of times if you didn't get rebalanced correctly after that, it's really depleting for a woman. And then the hormones change in the 40s and all that kind of stuff. So there's all those things happening. But you can do it. And you are doing it. So that you just have to think. And then let's even get more prepared now for the next level. Yeah. Okay, can we do that? Can we prepare for our success? Really important. Because I don't want you to be surprised. You're carrying a very precious thing. And the master's touch is that you start to have the energy and the wherewithal to know that you have the dignity of treating yourself that way, first and foremost. And then you know that your presence is going to become, and people are going to really need you in some way, or need to be around you, or want to, and they'll find different ways to do that, which is then the negative pole of that, which is, if Yogi Bhajan said, you're not a teacher if people aren't slandering you, because really what they're doing is what everyone's done on the recess, age-old 5-year-old behavior, which is, I'm going to hit you to get your attention. It's the same thing, exactly. So either negative attention or positive attention, everyone's going to be wanting to get your attention. So that's just the slander aspect of it all. Do we get that? That's just part of the game, So that you're doing something good if somebody is, somebody create a hashtag for me. I'm not telling you what it is. I was like, ooh, next level. So people are just trying to get, attention. That's it. Negative, positive. Everyone's going to want your attention, right? And that's part of, being a leader. And so we need to prepare for that so we don't get burnt out. Because so many stories of people. I was reading this is what I do with my day. I was reading a review of the Lindsay Lohan reality television show. I wasn't even watching the show. I don't know. Somehow I was just reading a review of somebody, and they were just like, some really painful moments in it, and I always, because Lindsay Lohan, if you know who she is, she was quite a very a really good actress. You may have forgotten how good of an actress she was. She really, really had like a very special aura and radiant body, and there was some one of the reasons she got famous was from some pretty intelligent acting. And then, the thing, she couldn't hold the thing, and it went, and so now she's, trying to kind of get the career back. And so I was reading this horrible review of a reality television show. But so she didn't prepare for her success. She was a child actor, and her parents didn't prepare her for success, and they didn't protect her. So, that's part of the thing. They didn't protect her. Any other questions about that? Because I do want to. Any questions about? Because I want to talk a little bit about the business of you. Because I feel like this is, kind of common that, first of all, what's happening, one of my favorite things that's happening in the Rama scene is that thousands and thousands of businesses are coming out of the Rama mandala, all over the world. So cool. It's totally my prayer, because I'm really into this. And I know that in order to create a revolution, we have to have an economic revolution. So creating businesses and serving each other in different ways in our communities. This is the stuff that dreams are made of. And my dreams are made of, certainly. And so I'm very happy about all of this. It's so wonderful. And so even if you're not going to be a yoga teacher, and if you are going to be a yoga teacher. These are businesses, and they require certain things. Like Pia's not here, right? Where is she? Oh, okay. She's just hanging out. Pia is the artist who did. I bought some of her collection, which is on this wall here on this side. She's a really beautiful painter, and I don't know if me and her have talked about this, but I've talked about this with a lot of other visual artists of the current day, which is that, as a visual artist these days, you have to have a social media representation. You have to present yourself on social media. You have to, you can't just be making the art. It's no longer, that's not the world we live in. So if the few people have maybe a little bit, like Tej wasn't on social media at all, and then they got her on Facebook, and now she has 2 Instagram accounts. But it took a minute, and I'm sure she's not on it. But even whoever you are, you have to have some sort of social media representation or some sort of relationship with the business of what you're doing. So I was talking to somebody at Harvard Business School, and they're like, what do you do when you are your own brand, which is often, some of you definitely have this. You are your own brand, and maybe you are creating other brands that are not just you, but it's all the same thing. You're serving, and each thing you create, each business you have. So some of you are like, a real estate agent, and now you're deciding to be a yoga teacher or whatever. Those 2 businesses have their own identities. They have their own brands. They have their own demands. They have their own kind of unique set of things that are required of you to show up in a certain way. And just as I spoke this morning, you want to be the administrator of that. You want to be professional. There's nothing more beautiful and more kind of magnetic than people who take what they do with dignity and with a professionality. Now, seriousness and kind of preciousness, I don't know, that stuff annoys me. I would much rather kind of be with someone who is a pro but isn't like precious about it. There's something about that. I think we've gotten, in the wellness industry, things have gotten swung over to like this kind of certain level of preciousness that feels a little vacuous, we'll put it, or some other, you know what I mean? Like sometimes it's just nice to just, everything's just, if you have, it's this quote that went quite viral because I think it has truth in it, which is, if you have the goods, you're not all worked up about it. Let me give you the lemongrass minted, just all this kind of, it's like, no, everything's fine. Or you're going to change. And I don't need to make a big fuss about it. So I do think that the wellness industry has gotten very, very fussy. And it's not really serving anyone except for just kind of a idea of something. So if you're going to have, or you already have, a wellness type of business, which is being a yoga teacher, you're now in the wellness industry, or if you're adding that to your repertoire where you have, another business and you're doing this, and or if you're not doing any of that, if you have no, but you want to take these skill sets and take them back to the other things that you're doing, which all of us are represented in here in one way, or these are universal principles. So even if you are working for someone else in a job that you have no intention in leaving, so you don't have your own business, but you're not going to become a yoga teacher and you're working for someone else, you still have your family, your selfhood. This is still a brand. What you're bringing to the table is, and if you start to kind of get that you're the administrator of that, you'll be promoted 1,000,000 times over, and you'll be making 10 times as much money as you're making now. I mean, that's just the way business people, or your corporation, or whatever you're working for, they're desperate for people who have some sobriety and sense of self-responsibility. Every business is desperate for that. So even if you have no kind of, and then your home life is a brand and a business that you're serving. So you can put these into lots of different, all of these teachings can really be put into so many different aspects. But let's talk, briefly, because many of you are in or thinking of going into the wellness industry. True or not true? Raise your hands if that's true for you. I'm just curious in the room. Yeah, so it's most of us are kind of in that scene. If you're not, though, these are universal principles. So what's going to give you kind of a cut above the noise of what's happening in the wellness industry, which is growing rapidly, it's really exciting and a beautiful thing that's happening. And just a kind of mirror of the Aquarian age, we knew that, of course, this is what was going to happen in this age. What's going to give you kind of a cut above that is a real kind of integrity around what you're presenting and what you're living. And I think, I'm talking a lot about this right now because we're gearing up for Aquarian Business Academy. But even if you are the brand, and somebody asked me this at Harvard Business School, she's like, how do you not get exhausted? It was kind of a similar question. You got to be really hardcore about this, that you actually are not the brand, even if you are the brand. The brand of what the narrative of, what is your name? Claire. Claire, what is that your brand, or do you have a name for it that's not your name? Yeah, it's you, right? Yeah. You're still, it's completely impersonal. You're serving Claire Bissingham. Am I saying it right? Bissingham. Yeah, Bissingham. Missingham. As if the ham is missing. Got it. So you are serving Claire Missingham. You're serving what that brand and narrative and business is. And it's going to change, and it's going to have demands, and I think it's a little harder to understand that when you are the brand. But I'm telling you, this will give you such a different vibe and so much more integrity, and also so much less kind of me, which is really a put off, and becoming more. Because even some of these influencers who are their brands, isn't it getting so boring? How boring is it? Like, even when it was kind of interesting not that long ago, like all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's another picture of her in like a bathing suit and a yoga pose. Isn't it so boring? Have you noticed? But you got to put yourself in second position as the consumer. Because I've really noticed where it's like, even where I used to kind of like to voyeur like somebody, that's like, it used to be like, oh, okay, she's in a bathing suit and a yoga pose. I'm using that as an example. And now it's kind of like, it's not interesting anymore. Like, I can barely bring myself, like, you can't even. So there's something happening in the infodementia. I'm very interested in like real time. This is why we teach Aquarian Business Academy twice a year now, and we're going to bring it to Europe. So we'll be doing 3 times a year. It's different every time, but part of it is that I'm studying consumer habits by putting myself in second position. Like, as the consumer, is this interesting to me? What is interesting about it? What is not interesting about it? And you should be doing that with your own brand. And the more you become personally impersonal, the less exhausted you are, because it doesn't have anything to do with you, first and foremost. You've created a narrative that's Claire Missingham. And it's a fictional character. But the integrity piece is that though it's a narrative, the integrity that people will feel is that you're in service to that narrative. And that you're doing your best to serve that narrative in the way that you can, in the best way you know how today. And that's going to become very magnetic of like, people are going to feel like this is, first of all, not all about them. So if you are kind of your brand, it's a big kind of pit hole and seduction for you to think that it's. So we want to, and then there's of course the other side of that, which is kind of this pseudo philanthropy or pseudo, like, it's not all about me. Where it's still all about me, you know what I mean? So there's both sides, and I'm telling you, your audience is getting more sophisticated. So they're going to feel both directions of it just like obviously being all about you, or, you know, like now I'm really using my influence because I'm a really good person. I'm now using, but it's still all about me. Right? So it's very obvious when you're serving the thing that's like, even if it's your name or if it's your brand or if it's your class or if it's your product or if it's your whatever it is, you know, it's obvious when you're just kind of serving the thing and you're a channel, as opposed to when it's all about you, which it just becomes less and less interesting. Like, I don't know how that Jenner girl, which one is the billionaire now? Kylie. What does she do? Makeup? Is it cool? Like, what's so magnetic about Kylie's makeup brand? We should study this. Because girl's a billionaire. And she's like 21 and a half. So I'm curious. Does anybody know? Has anybody paid any attention to this? So somebody else promotes it now?
No, I mean, she physically changed from she turns to, I guess, adapt to more like the global branding of the family, you know, I guess.
Kylie Jenner, yeah.
I think it's a combo of like several things. She, first of all, she also relied on the family brand by looking more alike. Like she worked on her physically on her face.
She got plastic surgery.
Yes, she got plastic surgery to look more like her, like the sibling.
Hey, you know, that's a lot of service to the brand. I mean,
no, it's a real investment. No, really.
Yeah, that's a bit. That's a lot.
And so I guess she felt more comfortable than promoting her own product.
I'm curious. We'll do a study on this Kylie Jenner thing. I haven't paid it much, except that she's a billionaire. I haven't paid much attention to it, but I'm very curious because, you know, there must be something that she's. I mean, that in a weird way, that's actually kind of. I mean, it's a totally weird way, but
before and after,
yeah,
it's really like.
Yeah.
Of her family,
and she amplified it. Yeah. Hey, that mother, man, whoa. That's a good business person right there. Whoa, that's intense. But you're, even if you are the brand, you gotta figure which, in a very strange way, that's what she did. I'm not encouraging that whatsoever, but you do have to kind of understand what you're serving. And it's an image, it's a narrative, it's a whole thing. And then if this is the sophisticated part, if you have integrity in serving it, people are going to notice that. There's integrity there. Yeah.
I was going to say it's a great.
So, here you go.
Hold on. They want to hear about it because it's interesting.
I think it's a question of coherency as a brand. You need to be coherent from A to Z in order to be clear as a message to go through to your customer.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Yeah, I would call it, coherency I get nervous about because I think it's used, this is just me personally, I think coherency is used, not that you're using it this way, but I think it's used in this way to convince people that their brand has to always look a certain way or the voice always has to be a certain way, which I am not necessarily, because I do feel like creative genius is some of the most creative genius kind of brand makers know how to make something new out of what, they know how to redefine. And I do think that there is something about like having that capacity to do. I was watching a documentary last night on, it's about like money and about scandals in corporations, but they're talking about Volkswagen and how did Volkswagen go from being Adolf Hitler's brand of vehicle to all of a sudden the hippie culture's vehicle. I mean, really go there. That was a huge, it's one of the biggest rebranding of our history, of our current history. It literally within about 10 years, it went from like Adolf Hitler's like baby, and he would talk about it all the time. They were showing all this footage of him talking about Volkswagen and how how brilliant the engineers were. I mean, it should have gone down after World War II, where people were like, I do not want to be seen in a Volkswagen. But instead, within less than 10 years, every hippie in America is driving a VW Bug. How did that happen? It's a good question when we're talking about these kind of rebrands. But I thought that was interesting. I had never thought of it that way, so they made a very good argument about that. But so I think it is about freshness and it's about integrity, which does create coherency. But instead of and what you'll find is if you're looking around, this is what I will tell you. If you're looking around at the wellness industry, nobody's doing it right. Very few people. So therefore, if somebody's trying to tell you that the way to build a brand is this, and this, some formula to that, I mean, and a lot of people are making a lot of money as brand consultants and brand firms and branding, like all this kind of, and I was making this joke that there's this brand in Los Angeles that's like a delivery food. I don't know if you guys heard me on Rama TV. It's a delivery food service, and some of my girls are, some of the team are getting this delivered. And first of all, I looked at it and I was like, ew, it looks like really weirdly healthy, but not in a good way. I like healthy food, but I need it to be like charismatic. I don't want just like some, I don't want anemic food. I need like food that has some energy, and so I would much rather like a grandmother who has energy make my food than some, kind of neurotic vegan. Do you know what I mean? I would so much rather like the chubby grandma than, so this looks like it's made by a neurotic vegan, like in a big way. And it has a name that I think is, obviously they went to some branding firm, because I see the whole thing in my head where it's like a bunch of like, early 30 something, like branding specialists, like batting around, like, well, it's like this and it's that. And like, no, I think it's this because it really, and they came up with this terrible name that's obviously a name that a branding company came up with. I can't say. I don't even remember. That's even the worst part of it. Shepard, do you remember? What? Oh, yeah. It is. Thistle. What, seriously? Yes. Oh, my God. It's a horrible name for food. But, and I was just laughing about it because I saw the whole, well, I don't know. I was talking to Hadi Jeevan about this because the name is everything, by the way. Because what is it? It's sound current. It's a sound current, right? So, but they just launched, so they probably have like some specials and whatever, and that's what the girls were trying it. But I certainly don't think it's gonna have a sticking or a staying power because it's just not juicy, and nobody people want, because even like my friends who have a very big brand in the vegan food market, and their book just came out, their whole vibe is like naughty and like sexy and like, and there's two of them, and like one is kind of like naughty and one's like, one's like naughty and sexy and the other one's just like pretty and nice. So they have like a really good little like thing going on. And so, and they know they know how to amplify that, and they're just serving, and it has nothing to do with who they are. It does have something to do with who they are, but anybody who has that and who has built something knows that they're serving the identity of the brand or the business itself. And each one you build will have a different thing. Did you have something on that? You're just holding the microphone, yeah. Behind you.
Thank you. Actually, you have a good brand, I think, and you're making it quite good, you know, with money making and things like this.
Yeah.
And so we can learn a lot from you also, you know, and actually that's why I'm here also.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. I mean, I would love, see, part of my, because I love this stuff, we want to create a creative agency because people are coming to us to help them with doing this, and nobody's talking about it this way. And this is why I think it's important. But as being in this training, it's important to be thinking about, you want to prepare for your success, because whatever you're doing, whether you're teaching yoga, whether you're in the wellness industry, or whatever you're doing, your success is going to be amplified when you practice these teachings. So you want to prepare for like what's going to happen when more people want me to do things, or more people are going to be asking for my energy, or I'm going to be, we want to get prepared for that, and really count on that, because it will happen. And you don't want at that point mistake the opportunity that is being presented to you, which is oftentimes people can trace back in their life the moment that they got an opportunity that would have changed their lives, and they just couldn't take it. True or not true? And we're not creating regret, but we want the next time, because we've all had that moment, we want the next time that we get the opportunity, which we will get, to be a time where we can have enough energy, enough wherewithal to take it. And continue to build on that. Because we want you to be, this is the difference between Yogi Bhajan's teachings and some of the spiritual teachings that happened before him in the age of Pisces. We want you, we're not in the model of the begging bowl, kind of, not a roof over our heads, spiritual practitioner. We're in the model of spiritual practitioners who have the wherewithal to be political leaders, to be business leaders, to be leaders of their home in a way that's really integral, to be community leaders, to be activists, to have the resource to be able to change the world. That's the whole game here, and it takes resources. On one level or another, it takes the resource of energy, it takes the resource of prosperity, it takes the resource of time and time management. We got a big issue about time management. X amount of time, X amount of energy, X amount. So when you asked me back there, how do you do priority ranking? Well, the first of all, you install a pattern if you don't already have it, and many of us don't. My friend Mickey Agrawal, who has a new book out, which is really good, called Disrupt Her. She has a company called Thinx, which are the period panties, and now she came out with these bidet. You can put this bidet on the top of your toilet. So that's her kind of scene. She likes that kind of like the first chakra products, first and second chakra. But she was saying her Indian father sat her down and about money, and we had a good talk about this. There's research now that the reason parents don't sit their children down and talk about money is that they feel too guilty about the way that they behave with money, so that they don't feel like they can teach their children anything. So it's kind of an interest. So it just creates this kind of debt consciousness in the epigenetics. But her dad sat her down, who was Indian, and the Indians, the East Indians from India that I'm speaking of, there's some really ancient business practices that are quite good, and a lot of this stuff we've recapitulated and organized it in certain ways for Aquarian Business Academy, but. He basically sat her down and he said, I want to teach you about money. And this is the same thing about stress. Spend less than you're making. And she was like 10, 11 years old. She was like, okay. He was like, this is all you need to understand. You just need to spend less than you're making, and everything's going to be great. And so, it was just this fundamental teaching that many of us, like our parents didn't even tell us that. We just didn't have any kind of fundamental kind of understanding. And in the Yogi Bhajan terms, not only that, but we get 4 levels of preparedness for, and Hadi even tells this story that him and Tej went to every tantric course that Yogi Bhajan ever taught. They went to every yatra that he ever did. And boy, are they happy that they did. And why did they do that? How did they do that? It wasn't because either of them, Tej was working, they both were doing the same thing that any young couple with a child were doing, which is hustling. Nobody came from, anything. There was no trust funds. There was no, which if you have one, great, it's a good, use it in a good way. But in their case, they didn't. So there was no kind of support that way. They were just hustling. They were young parents and whatever. But the reason why and when they looked around, people were kind of always, it was always kind of a thing where they're at every tantric course, they're at every yatra. But it was because they had 3 levels of preparedness so that they could do that. And they made that a priority ranking. So they made sure that they had the money to go on the yatra because they knew that Yogi Bhajan wasn't going to be around forever. And then they made sure that they had them, that's where they prioritized their resource. But we're not told, that we need to be prepared and that we need to kind of see things in a sober way and be intelligent about it. And simultaneously, if you have to, any business that's really kind of operating, you got to pay to play. So you have to spend money to make it. You got to borrow money to make it. You got to, there's certain things that, like, when you get into the business realm, you have to, but that you're just sober about these things and you're prepared.
There's the second part. Do you hear me? Yes. Yeah. There's the second part of this question. Do you suggest that everybody is making his own brand? Or we are now in this yoga teacher training here, and this is Rama Institute, and then I thought it's connected to the Rama Institute then, and that you don't do your own brand or something like this. There are a lot of Kundalini yoga teachers already everywhere, and as I came to understood, there are a lot of different styles also with different teachers from Yogi Bhajan, and now this is Hari Jivan and you and Bojas and so many other people also. And then, so I think we are your babies then, and so somehow this is Rama.
Well, what we hope, which is why I want to have some, success conversations with you, and business conversations, is what we hope is that, and our intention and our prayer is that you're getting a rigorous training, and a training that creates a kind of environment where whoever wants to hire you or be around you, whether it's a student or a client or whoever, that they notice the quality of your practice and the quality of the sophistication that the environment of the university is giving you, that rigor of education. So it's not like you wouldn't mention that you went to Harvard University, or Rama University. It's not that you wouldn't mention that or use that as a way to build, but no, we want you to go out there and do the things you're meant to do, which could look a lot of different ways. We need teachers at Rama, and people who are really committed to that, but also many of you will go and open your own studios or create your own, or develop more of what you've already been doing, or this will be there'll be all sorts of enrichment that happens, which is just what any education is an enrichment. Any good education, I like your Gucci sweatsuit. by the way. I was like, I know that snake. Speaking of brands, we kind of all need that sweatsuit, I think. Okay, so does that make sense to you when you're developing and I think the wellness industry needs some revolutionary characters in it. We need something more interesting than what's kind of been so far. So I think we need to start thinking about this stuff differently and talking about it differently and showing it differently. So it's not another kind of place that we're creating this kind of subconscious competitiveness. Have you noticed that in the wellness industry? Yeah. So we're purveying more competitiveness, which is empty because competition is a non-reality. So it's an empty thing that you're selling someone. We want to actually give something to someone, which is an experience of their own reality, their own happiness, their own fulfillment, their own purpose. So that kind of and ask yourself when you're posting and when you're purveying your goods, whatever those are, whether it's a yoga class or a thing, ask yourself, am I like from second position, how does this make me feel as the consumer? Where does this hit me? Where does it touch me? Does it confront me? Does it poke, provoke, and elevate me? Or is it just another kind of like low key, I'm just going to smear my privilege all over everybody? Because, have you heard this, that they're finding a lot of people are faking, like Instagram travel people, like travel bloggers, they're faking the selfies. Have you heard this? I don't know how they're doing it. You heard me talk about it. So somebody told me this at dinner the other night, where it's like they're taking, like, I don't know. We're going to have to look into this. Somebody who's interested in this, Google it and let's find out. We'll talk about it tomorrow. But so they're using like some background that makes it look like they're on a plane. And so now it's becoming very prevalent that people are faking their kind of trips and their really like luxury wellness brand influencer lifestyle stuff. That's, God, it hurts me to think about like what in someone would feel like they needed to do that. I mean, I understand that your brand does become a hungry hippo and you do have to feed it in some way, but that is it's really intense. It's really intense. So we're in part of the Aquarian age, the dark side of the Aquarian age, and the dark side of technology is charlatanism. Yeah. Well, shallow as well. Shallowism and charlatanism. Yeah, both. And Nalia wanted to say something, and then we'll take a lunch once we hear
I have
from
a
you.
question about this personal and personality.
Yes.
When you create your brand, how do you stay authentic on the one hand, real, but without really showing your neurosis? Like, for example, you pose yourself as a brand, as a wellness brand.
Yeah.
Like, I like eating healthy, but I like having pizza with my husband in the bed at midnight watching a TV. Do you share that? I don't do that every day, but I really enjoy it. Or I have my days when I'm neurotic, where I shout at my child. Do you share that stuff, or you kind of keep it private?
I think thank you for asking. I think it's a really slippery slope here.
But on the other hand, I don't want to portray myself, for example, as a person who always has it together.
I think so this is my answer to this, which I'm showing you the answer and how I'm doing this. So just pay attention. You have to control the narrative. Meaning, just like your mind training, you're focusing on what you want to amplify, which could be that you really want to show like this is a common kind of mom brand thing, which is like everything's not perfect. Like I know I look perfect on here, but it's just been like such a hard day. There's a lot of mom branding that has gone in that. And I think that that's gotten really trite and hackneyed. And I really, really want to encourage anyone who has children to use your children as a part of your brand is a very dangerous thing. I know you don't, but I'm just saying this is a huge thing that's happening out there. And the children will feel their dignity and their choice they will feel at some point you will have to pay to play for that. So it's not a good idea. Because photography, it is a psychic pressure, people looking at you, and you will feel it. There's a weight to it. There's a weight to it, right? There's a weight to it. That's why we were joking. You know, I think it's common to think that modeling is not hard. It's very difficult in so many different ways and one of these ways is that you have a psychic pressure of people looking at your image and thinking all sorts of things and sexualizing you and you know, hating you for being beautiful, loving you for being beautiful. I mean, it's a big psychic weight. So I've heard. Model life, but no, this is very true. But any public figure and we're all public figures because we have social media, right? So putting your child in that, which is not what you're doing, is a really, really, really dangerous thing to do. So you want to be really, really careful about this because the children have their own dignity, their own destiny, and you don't know what that's going to be. So if they're the next president, you know, and you put their butt on your social media, that's taking away their dignity, and it happens all the time. So, but I think you have to control the narrative. So there's I like watching footage of different kinds of like high pressure, like somebody getting questions asked, like in a press conference. How if you're a good press, what are they called? Press secretary, which we don't have a lot of these people anymore. But if you're a really good press secretary, you know exactly how to control the narrative. And it's not that you're not telling the truth, and it's not that you're not answering the questions, but you know exactly where to direct the attention. So there was the Boston bombing for the marathon had happened, and you see, you know, the sheriff or, you know, whoever the kind of head police officer in Boston was there. I'm not sure what they're called, whether it's I don't know. But he was asked a very specific question that they did not want to answer. And he was like, well, it was a very complicated day here. He just totally the narrative, right? So you have to decide, you know, you're serving this narrative, and really look at second position. How can I serve the narrative in an integral way? Because I think it's great to have humor and show funny things and be you know, expansive with how you share and what you share. I think it's beautiful. And then some brands, that's not appropriate. So it's like you do, but there's a lot of TMI happening on social media, a lot of it. And there's a lot that even like going back to that original conversation, even with the like, I'm showing that, you know, here I am, just a really beautiful woman, like eating pizza in bed, like I'm just like you. It's still all about me. Too much information. And I will say as the consumer, so I don't know about you guys, but as the consumer, when I'm scrolling on Instagram, which is a visual platform for God's sakes, if I see more than like 150 letters, if I see more than 150 letters, is that what they're called? Characters. I'm just like, I resent them. Like more in the comments, I'm like, fuck you, more in the comments. This is a visual platform. I do not want to hear more. I'm so mad about that. Like as a consumer, I don't want to hear, like if you have more to say than a sentence or two on Instagram, like get off of Instagram and, you know, go to Facebook for God's sakes. That's where people rant and like, you know, I mean, and so I do think that there's a lot of sharing that is unnecessary and really self referencing. Yogi Bhajan says instead of self-referencing, become someone who has self-reverence. It's only one letter difference. reverence. It's a very different thing. So you could run that through that kind of filter. Like, is this a reverent thing? How reverent am I in this moment of both the humor of the, it can be irreverently reverent, which I very much take, that's, part of my brand is being irreverently reverent and really kind of, so I run it through though, that this is a reverent thing and this is a, and I have the privilege of so many things. So I have the privilege to even have the time to do this right now. So then it's like, how am I going to use that? And how am I going to be? And you're going to make mistakes. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I think I've just realized that how good of an example you are of that, because you're very relatable. It feels like you can really touch you, like,
yep.
But honestly, we don't know anything about you.
Exactly.
Like nothing about your personal life. But at the same time, you feel very, like, here, very
exactly. Bingo. And also, but even when you're sharing, like, you'll want to share stories and stuff in your class and whatever. Even then, you can do some different things to hold, but it is personally impersonal. Like, really, true spiritual practice is you're even personally impersonal with yourself. Because it's just funny. It's not that you don't have an intimate relationship with yourself, but the whole, the kind of, well, I'm mad and I'm a thing and I'm doing it and all the moods and all the things and what I'm upset about, it becomes very funny and you almost become impersonal about that too. Which is why, spiritual people who have a certain kind of spiritual weight to them have that feeling that you're describing, that it's like, I can, like in some way I'm touched so deeply, but because it's their own, they're not identified with some like major, it's self-reverence. That's a very good way of putting it, is self-reverence rather than self-reference. And if you run every post that you make through that, or every offer that you have, or every newsletter you write, or every, I don't know, however you're kind of building your business, if you run it through, is there reverence here? Is there humor? Would I want to read it? Would I want to consume it? Would I want to buy it? Would I want to engage in it? And what are the things that are making it so that I don't want to? Or who am I alienating in this? Because I do think that's another thing that's a real misnomer about business. It's like, who is your market share? It's always like this Piscean thing people want to ask you. And I'm always like, it's so fucked up. There's ageism in it. There's racism in it. There's just a lot of, it's like, well, anybody, Yogi Bhajan was very clear about this. Anybody who has a connection to Guru Ram Dass is someone who's going to come to you. The only reason they're coming, which is why it makes it so impersonal, is that they have a connection to Guru Ram Dass. I have nothing to do with you. And that's why you even say when you tune in, Guru Ram Dass, make me look good. Because I'm representing you. So if that's your problem, not mine.
Thanks.
Yeah. And then there's a way to hold community and let people in a way where you're sharing your purity and your piety, not in this kind of the way piety's been used before, but you're sharing of yourself in a way that it really can be of benefit, rather than, like, would it really benefit you guys for me to share, the things that people share on social media in that way? Not that stuff doesn't happen particularly. I mean, not really. It doesn't really happen. That's the other thing. It's just a different relationship with the flow of reality and what you're focused on.
Yeah, it's interesting, but it hooks you up. Because when you give a lot of details, you start trying to apply it to yourself. And it's not always the right thing to do.
Yeah, I feel like, let me ask you, because I'm not saying that I'm the only person. That's why you need to get multiple perspectives. But do you guys read those long captions on Instagram?
Well,
Does anybody?
Some people I follow for that, but there are like a few of them.
Sometimes? But you do it because you're because of like your voyeur, right? The content is educating? There's some good, yes.
Then I'm interested in reading their message and their point of view. So then I put my finger,
And you read it. Because that's what Charlotte, who is my director of integrated marketing, she is really into copy. I'm into, I look at it for the pictures, always. All I want is, I just want images, because an image to me is 1,000 words, even though I'm a poet, and I believe in words, but I want short words. So if anytime somebody hits like beyond a certain character count, I'm just like, no, thank you. Can't do it. I just can't even. But it's good. But then this is a good conversation because that's Charlotte. That's what Charlotte says. She says, no, people want to read the content. And I am surprised that people read the content because that's not the kind of consumer I am. But you want to pay attention because there are different, you are going to be working with different neurologies and different. And so it's good to get that feedback, right? But let's say statistically in the room, we had about 10% of the room who's interested in reading this stuff. So good to note when you're thinking about what you're putting out there. This will be the last comment. Oh, you didn't have one? Okay, great. This is a good conversation. We'll continue some. I'm going to tell you, we'll do a little more specific business teachings and that success teachings tomorrow because I want you guys to be really successful. You're my babies. I want you all to be in a Gucci sweatsuit and really successful. But I really mean it. All of you can make a big difference in the world, and that's all and I believe in you, and so I want to do everything I can to support you. And so we'll continue to have this conversation. Okay, let's just do a Satnam, and we'll go to lunch. Inhale and exhale. Inhale. Sa